Hey everyone, welcome to this video. A bit of a different format today. I'm going to be looking at some old games that I don't have live recordings of. So I'm primarily going to be using this woodcutter tool that Severi made. Um, please let me know what you think of this kind of format, reviewing it, etc. Um, love your feedback if you want to hear more of this, less of this, change it up, any of that stuff. But the purpose for this video is to talk a bit about Duke. This discussion came up a while back, and I was first of all saying that I think Duke is better than a lot of people give it credit for. Not that I'm saying that it's good, but that a big part of the difference is that a lot of the times people just think of Duke as, oh, I'm just gonna like start buying duchies on turn 5 or turn 7 and just plow through them and then start buying Dukes, which, yeah, is a thing you can do, and sometimes that's good, and definitely I go for that sometimes. Well, I could probably talk a lot more about that aspect of the card as well, but the point I was trying to make in the discussion was it's more than that, right? It can come up in more situations where you've built quite a bit more than that, and then still decide to go for Duke or have Duke affect how you're playing. And that's the kind of games I'm going to show off today. So, in the interests of making this video not be forever, I actually recorded a previous version of this that was over an hour long, which seemed way too long. So, I'm only going to be looking at a few different games, but hopefully it'll demonstrate my point. We're going to start with this game where, hey, Duke is here. We have Inheritance, and we have Museum, Mask, Silk Merchant, and because of Museum, I am at some point going to go for some one of everything strats. But let's start into the game. My opponent gets the 5-2 and I get the 4-3. I think that's good for me here as the only fives are not great to open. Royal Seal is okay, and now I realize that I've missed Junk Dealer because of the way that the layout is here. Yeah, no, Junk Dealer is a good open. 5-2 is actually good. Anyway, I go Silk Merchant Silver, and I'm going to try to spike an early Inheritance, which I do on turn 3. A little bit lucky to get it quite this early, but getting it early is not that unlikely. And I inherit Poacher, which I don't know. If I were doing it now, I'd probably just go ahead and inherit Silk Merchant. But anyway, this is what it is. My opponent gets a Swashbuckler, and I'm going to zoom through some of this game. I get a Talisman. I'm going to be wanting, poachers and Silk Merchants multiple and Silver's multiple. Note that the only village is the villagers from Silk Merchants, so you can't draw a ton here, and that's probably fairly important. But okay, the game progresses on. We both are building our decks. We've each inherited Poacher. I could go through in more depth here, but again, trying to keep the video fairly short. Here we can see that at the end of this turn, I have 12 money, 2 buys. So I go for a Silk Merchant and a Province. So one of the things you'll note in these games, and actually even if I were going for through a lot of the games where I go for Duke, my plan is basically Duke from the start. Um, in almost all the games, not all of them, but the big majority, um, I actually get Province in the same games where I get Duke. So that's something worth noting, I think. Anyway, here I get a Silk Merchant and a Province. I'm going to eat, no matter what I want, I'm going to probably want a Province at some point, and I might just be provincing out. I'm not done building, but yeah, it's very possible I could have gone for like another gold and an altar there or something, but this is what I decided to do. Anyway, we keep building a bit. No more green cards coming until now. And at this point, again, this is still fairly early. Turn 8, I get a duchy and a silver. And again, you'll see that, well, I have I've altered a silk merchant. I haven't altered at this point. I've altered a silk merchant into a swashbuckler. This gives me more villagers. I have quite a number of terminals, so I want to keep the villager count fairly high. It gives me more coffers. And then I have 8 money here, and I go duchy silver. Again, part of this is for museum. These is kind of one of everything strats, but also being able to get duchies seems to me to be a good thing, partially because Duke is around. My opponent has just been building their deck, but their deck does look pretty good, right? They have a gold. I have a gold. They have a royal seal. I have a royal seal. They have a few. I mean, the decks actually look pretty similar. I have a lot more coppers, right? I have 7 coppers still. My opponent has 4. So their deck is a little bit better than mine. But I already have this province, and I get this duchy here. And okay, anyway, let's zoom ahead. And my opponent gets their province. The silk merchants run down, and yeah, so they also get a duchy here. And okay, the silk merchants are gone. I have an altar. My opponent does not. We've kind of both been going for one of everything strats, and yeah, that's where the game sits. We each have a bunch of coffers and several villagers, but not a ton. So continuing to build a bit. And the chest is going back and forth with these several coffers, which are mostly from Silk Merchant, but the Swashbuckler helps a little bit, and gaining the chest is really good because just getting a lot of golds is good in a game like this. And you'll notice, so I get double province here. So I've been going hard on the provinces, and this then makes it such that my opponent goes triple duchy here. And okay, so this is the kind of important crunch point of the game. Yeah, let's back up to where they are right here. They have 13 money. Here's where it is. They're down by 10. They have 8 coffers, so they could go double province duchy. They could go double province. They could go province duchy. What they do is triple duchy. Now, if there weren't dukes around, then well, double province duchy never really looks very good because I have 4 coffers, and if you go double province duchy, that gets you to 56, and just province wins the game for me, and it's just pretty likely that I'm going to be able to province, and just being able to do that, being able to win the game, doesn't look like a great look. Province duchy, probably a lot more reasonable. You're still behind by 1 point. But then I have a lot of options to province duchy, or, I mean, on a good day, I can double province. So triple duchy makes some sense, particularly because Duke is on the board, right? My opponent already has 1 duchy. Going triple duchy here allows them, I mean, they could have gone for quad duchy even, or triple duchy Duke. Quad is probably a touch better. But because if the game gets more prolonged, having these extra duchies is going to help because of the dukes, makes going for triple duchy much more appealing. So that's what they do. I just get a single duchy, and then my opponent gets a duchy. So at this point, I have a 3-point lead. Our coffers are somewhat depleted. My coffers are very depleted. The duchies are gone. My opponent has 5 of them, and I only have 3. Now, it's important to note that the first um, Duke is worth 2 extra points because of Museum, which also changes the math a bit. So this turn, I gain several more coffers. Um, right, I alter a Silk Merchant. I get a couple Swashbuckler plays in, gets me the chest back, but it gets me up to 4 coffers, and I have exactly 5 money. Um, I get a Duke because it seems to me that, well, it's a 5 point Duke, which is pretty good. And more than that, getting the province probably spends too much of my economy for not so much gain, right? I have exactly 5. This is only 1 point less than spending 3 coffers, and ending the game is something I'm interested in because the long term helps my opponent, right? This Duke plan helps them a lot here, but yeah. So we zoom ahead a little more. 2 more Dukes from my opponent to take a small lead. I get a province. I just have to hope, but I had 8, so that's nice. But I just have to hope that double province isn't coming, but I can't really do anything about that. My opponent, meanwhile, getting more Dukes. This is just showing A, that Duke is important in allowing the comeback from my opponent. B, in these kinds of games, you want to be able to build quite a bit. And then here, I cheekily get a farmer's market. It's worth 2 points, and I want to have some pile control, right? I want to be able to, if my opponent goes Duke, I can go double Duke. If they go for province, I can go for province. So this is the idea behind farmer's market here, particularly because I got a top ticket with the royal seal. They do get a Duke, and this lets me double Duke to win. So that's the first game. Second game, yeah. So here, there's not a great number of plus actions, but there is royal carriage and maybe sacrifice. We have canal to make everything cheaper. Um, exorcist for some trashing, along with the sacrifice, patron, and we want to activate our lamp. So again, we both start off building pretty normally. My opponent opens with a wharf. I have a 4/3 and go exorcist silver. Get a patron, couple patrons even. You want some royal carriages and wharves, and yeah, basically we're just building pretty normally, and then boom, I'm able to get my wishes off here. I got a bard to help me do that, and a wharf and a secret cave, and a little bit again one of everything strats. And I get a canal because just the game is going to go long enough. Canal is going to make me a ton of money, and I'm likely to have a bunch of extra buys with wharves. My opponent also gets their lamp activation on the next turn, right? Turn 10 instead of turn 5, but it's not a huge deal. They have extra wharf. They have a royal carriage. I don't have, right? I only have 1 wharf and no royal carriage, so I was a little bit faster to getting to my wishes. On the other hand, they have a little bit more good stuff, right? They also have a hunting ground, so their draw is better. And I have canal, so the game is still very much in the balance. Um, yeah, not a great turn after that for me, but I obviously still have all these wishes coming up. And the villagers, which is a big deal, I think, because I don't end up with things where I'm drawing dead, which is, what happens here to my opponent after some wharf plays. So, yeah, here I open in on duchies, just getting 1 as well as continuing to build a little bit. So in some ways this is a straight for duchy kind of plan, but obviously you can tell we're building quite a lot. And I just think that the duchy duke plan, while it does cost me a little bit more in deck space compared to if I go for provinces, particularly with canal, the efficiency of the points I think is just good enough, and I don't think that provincing out is going to happen. So even though I've built a lot, Duchy and Duke seems a better way to go for me. And here on my opponent's turn, they just build a lot. They exorcist a gold to get a ghost and be able to build a lot more. Um, and so they're just building up a lot. And here we'll see a very important turn coming up. I get 2 more duchies and a silver, and put a few things down to secret cave. Have a lot of wharfs coming in on my next turn, and still have a couple of villagers. And yeah, my opponent goes for another ghost here. Is this no? This is the same turn we just looked at. What is this? I get a little bit confused. This was double duchy silver, and then my opponent, yeah, gets a ghost here. Second ghost, right? Yeah. And I think this is just overbuilding a bit, because here I'm able to get 4 duchies. So now, and a duke. So now I have 7 duchies and a duke. I have 28 points. And there's some pile threats, right? This is the other thing associated with going for duchy duke sometimes is pile threats. I drew my whole deck here. As you can see, nothing in discard or deck. I have some treasures in hand, which I play. I drew my whole deck. I didn't play this bard because I didn't think I needed it, and I'm going to exercise it for an imp. I have I have 21 money and 7 buys. Everything costs 4, so I can get 5 things, and I get 4 duchies and a duke. Yeah, it's not enough that I can end the game, but my next turn, I'm reasonably likely to be able to, which is, I mean, this is part of why I don't want to just go for 5 duchies here, is I do want to not leave myself too open. But yeah, we can see that here I have 7 duchies and a duke. My opponent, to come back, needs to get like 5 provinces, and that's just not going to happen that fast. They don't have enough money to get 5 provinces super fast. And then I can either counter with just dukes, which are just a lot more efficient for me than them. So in some ways I built more, but in some ways it was about knowing when to go, and canal making Duchy Duke plan more interesting. And let's skip back to the beginning of this game. So we see Swindler here, and you may be thinking, so Swindler. The reason that's important here is because Duke is, Duke is a thing. Duke is a worse target to get hit when your 5 gets hit by Swindler. So that's how it's going to be relevant here. And that actually is relevant, a substantial amount of the time, in a way which Duke is, well, I don't know if that makes Duke strong, but it makes it relevant and impactful. Probably makes it weak when you're doing that to it. Although the difference from Duchy maybe isn't that huge, it is real. Like Duke is it's just real bad early in the game, obviously. But actually, that's not how it's relevant here. I do have some other games that maybe I'll look at another time where it's just kind of weird, as opposed to like I go in this kind of building fashion that I'm showing in these games, or just that I'm plowing straight in for dukes like I talked about before. There's some weird games where it's relevant but not in the normal way, and that props up too. But anyway, this game we'll see we both get swindlers pretty early. I mean, not super early, but pretty early. We're both thinning down. We both are going to be getting Academy is the only, well, the best village. I think it's better than Cursed Village here. And you have some non-terminals, which we're going to get a lot of to work with the Academy. My opponent, you're eventually going to see, is going to monopolize on these labyrinth points. But yeah, we're both going to be building and thinning. I have a couple of amulets, which haven't been the best for me, but they've been okay. So, and then torture is very important, obviously, because, well, with enough villagers from Academy, you can do the torturer thing, and then the cursed village kind of counters it when you have it, but it doesn't work well with the torturer, and so it's a little bit tricky. We each have a swindler at this point. It's okay here. Mostly you want to hit their fives into dukes, which never happens. Spoiler alert. Um, yeah, you don't necessarily want to hit their zeros so much here, so it's maybe not as good as normal, but also it came with a villager, so it's that offsets the cost a little bit. Anyway, we go pretty heavy on candlestick makers, and I can't help but think that probably some more rat catchers might have been good, although we're reasonably thin anyway. Our opponent is not, so they definitely could have used more rat catchers. They only have the one um, amulet, and they did get 3 rat catchers, but 5 candlestick makers seems a bit much. I have 2. Um, yeah, Seer also looking pretty good with all of the little threes we have. Um, anyway, it's all been building up to this point. You see, no green cards have been bought yet. I'm pretty sure these estates were coming from Swindler plays. And so now we're getting close to the stage where this pile's out, this pile's low, this pile's not really low, but vaguely low, right? You got to start thinking about points a little bit. My opponent does have a lead. So pretty soon we're going to get to the greening phase. And as you can see, there's only a few turns left in the game, and this game did not end on a resignation like the previous one. So my opponent does get their province there, and I get a province here. See, it's still about province. And a couple more provinces. Well, 1 province from my opponent and 1 province getting milled from my opponent, hitting my province with their swindler. And so the provinces come off. Still no duchies and dukes. I only have 2 turns left. My opponent only has 1 turn left. You think duchy and duke can't possibly be good, right? But big turn here, and again, kind of similar to what we saw before. I have 15 money. I have 10 coffers, right? I could double province and duchy, right? And that would tie. Right? Am I doing my math right there? 16, 25. Right, that would tie. I don't have a 4th buy to win the game. So, basically, yeah. And I want to be able to win the game. So I go in for 3 duchies. And I just basically counting on my opponent not being able to double province here. Yeah, and if they can't double province, then I think I'm in good shape. My opponent does get a single province, so I'm down by 14. But I'm able to cash in here at the end. I have more buys, 5 buys, and then all of these coffers, right? I'm able to cash in here at the end and province and get a bunch of duchies and a duke. And I think actually technically in this game I had enough money that even an extra duchy would have won me the game and not the duke. The duke is worth more points though. So it's helpful, and you can easily imagine in a game like this, maybe I could have gone a little bit more for duchies earlier as opposed to one of my provinces. Since I'm coming from behind, it really helps me to be able to do the comeback thing, because it's just an extra big well reserve of points. Finally, I'm going to look at one game in the client. This game was originally played by RTT and Kiliana, and it's a game I noticed while I was looking at this topic to prepare the video. We see again a pretty normal looking game to start. They each go Spice Merchant and Recruiter and get a bunch of Heralds. But then as the game goes on, yeah, they start with some provinces. They get Guildhall that gives them some extra coffers and stuff. But you go to Duchy Dancing, and then Duchy Dancing looks a little bit better because Duke's around. So you go for Duchy Dancing a little bit earlier, and then you go hard in on duchies because now your deck is not so good that they can province out on you, and you go in for some duchy duke kind of plan. And yeah, it's really harder to look at this, I think, turn by turn than if we went through the woodcutter. Although I guess I could try, um, right, by looking at the end thing that people bought every turn. Monument and Guildhall, Monument and Province, Province and Copper. And the coppers look a lot better because you can trash stuff with Spice Merchant and because they're getting coffers from Guildhall. So the coffers don't look so bad, or the coppers don't look so bad here. Go to Province. And so the provinces mostly go down and then they go into duchy dancing and then into dukes. And this is a very normal way in which dukes can be relevant as well. Makes the duchy dancing option a little bit better and makes it feel a bit less bad if you go into that and your deck starts to cease to be able to perform as well as you want it to, and changes basically how you have to play the end game here. Anyway, I know this is a bit of a different format. Um, well, let's look at the final game states here. Deck states, I should say. So it's 4 duchies and 5 dukes against 3 duchies and 3 dukes, 3 provinces each. This basically makes the difference, right? The extra duchy and dukes means that this player scored 32 off the duchy and duke. This was not me again. This player scored only 18, and so that 14-point difference is actually more than the difference in the game. Um, yeah, but hopefully you've learned something about how duchy and duke can be very relevant even in decks where you build quite a bit. Games where you build quite a bit means that you have to view the end game a bit differently, and sometimes it's still worth going for over your province plan. Oftentimes it's you do whichever the one your opponent didn't because you've built more, and well, you do need to build more so that you don't choke out on green since they don't necessarily have to help you empty the piles that you need. Sometimes also with a 3-pile thing it can come in. So those are the big ways in these kinds of games where Duke can be appropriate. Sometimes it's just a desperation play too, which, I mean, you usually lose when you're making desperation plays, but maybe you lose a little bit less often with Duke. Anyway, like I say, hopefully you've learned something. Please let me know if you have any questions, any comments. Again, any suggestions about the format of the video, maybe ways I can display things better, etc., etc. But I hope you've enjoyed it, of course, most of all. And this is WanderingWinder signing off.